All right. Hi, everyone. How's everyone doing today? Thank you all for coming. So, I've been coming to the Awwwards Conference for a few years now, so I'm really stoked to be presenting here for the first time. So by the end of this talk, we will have covered, let me turn on the clicker, that will help. All right. So by the end of this talk, we'll have covered three main topics. Number one, my experiences working at Squarespace. Number two, the creative possibilities in creative today, the career possibilities in creative today. And number three, I want to share some tips and tricks on how to find the best workplace for you. But before we go through all of that, let's do some introductions first. So my name is André Ribeiro, and I'm design manager at Squarespace. And I'm from Brasilia, the capital of Brazil. And Brazil is a very interesting place. I don't know if you guys know, but it's a planned city, which means it was designed and built from scratch in about 1950s. And Brasilia has a very interesting, unique design. It has this kind of airplane shape. So here you can see an aerial shot of Brasilia. So running from top to bottom, you can see kind of the body of the plane. And running from left to right, you can see kind of the wings of the plane. And another interesting aspect about Brasilia is, you can see by this photo how structured and geometric and kind of gridded the city is. And Brasilia is well known for its modernist buildings, a lot of them designed by the famous architect, Oscar Niemeyer. Oh, the laser works, awesome. So places like the National Congress on the left or the National Theater on the right. And because of all the design and kind of architecture and kind of way of thinking, Brasilia is actually now considered a UNESCO heritage site. But why I'm talking about Brasilia? I thought this was a presentation about working in tech. I'm talking about Brasilia because I think that growing up around all the sense of design, organization, and creative thinking might have inspired me to become a designer in the first place. And somehow led me to be here, talking to you all today. All right, so before we talk about my experiences working at Squarespace, I want to kind of share a little bit of my professional background and kind of like what got me there. So throughout my career, I've worked in places, I started in Brasilia, so a lot of agencies there, also places in London, in San Francisco, and now a few places in New York City. And I've worked for all types of places, kind of like small local studios, all the way to kind of big international agencies, right? And even though I've been in the creative industry for over 15 years now, this is actually the first time that I've ever worked in-house. And since I joined Squarespace, a lot of people ask me about it. So how is it, Do you like working in-house? How is it different than working at an agency? And because I've been getting this type of questions quite often lately, I decided to pick this as the topic for my presentation today, or at least the main topic. So, part one, my experiences working at Squarespace. So in this section, I'm going to be sharing how the teams are structured at Squarespace, and also show you some work examples along the way to give a good sense of what each team does. But first of all, what is Squarespace? Some of you might not know what Squarespace is. So Squarespace is a do-yourself website making platform. So with Squarespace, you can register a domain, you can create a website, you can also build an online store, and you can also use our marketing tools to kind of keep track of your audience and so on and so forth. And our headquarters is here in New York City. So here's an aerial a shot from our rooftop. We also have offices in Portland and Dublin. And at Squarespace, we have three main creative disciplines. We have the visual and web design team, we have the product design team, and we also have the content studio. So within the visual and web design team, I help overseeing a lot of the web design work. So we do things like Squarespace.com, right? Or at least everything before a user creates an account. So here is our current homepage hero that we launched not too long ago when we started introducing this idea of all-in-one platform. So websites, online stores, so on and so forth. And we also work on our featured customers, right? So at Squarespace, we consider our customers one of the most valuable assets we have. So we're constantly trying to find ways of really, showcasing the community and what they're doing on our platform. So folks like Adrian Raquel, she is a photographer here in New York City. So we decided to come up with a customer page, to kind of tell a little bit about her story and the things that she likes about Squarespace and the modules and the components. And we've done a similar exercise for a lot of other customers we have. So, Keanu Reeves, Tom Delavan, Daniel Arsham, etc. So here's an example of a site we've created for the Super Bowl campaign with Keanu Reeves. We produced a few shots with him, a few different videos. So we wanted to create a site where we could host all those videos. And the Super Bowl campaign was kind of the leading one. And beyond the stuff that we do for Squarespace.com, we do a lot of special projects, kind of like one-off things. So things like our company timeline, and when you think about a company timeline, usually it's such a kind of dry thing to work on. And then when we got briefed to do this project, it was actually very interesting. We just got really a spreadsheet with a bunch of company milestones, and that was all we got. So a big challenge on this project was to come up with ways of making the experience more interesting and more, engaging, and just something different for a timeline. And we actually won a site of the day with this project, so it was really exciting to see that type of project being recognized. Another one-off project we've done, it was the Circle website redesign. So for those of you who haven't heard of Circle, Circle is a program we created to support web designers building their web design business on Squarespace. So for this site, we want to really kind of refresh the photography, the content, and the structure. And we also wanted to humanize the brand, so kind of bringing some of the customer stories or the Circle member stories rather up front and kind of showcasing how those kind of freelance specialists are using the Circle perks and the Squarespace in general. And we actually also won a site of the day with this project, so it's really cool to see a lot of those one-off projects actually being recognized by the design community. All right, so we talked about the web design team. And then I want to talk a little bit about the product design team as well, because there's a lot of confusion, between what the web design team does, what the product design team work on. The nomenclature sometimes varies in places. So at Squarespace, product designers are the ones responsible for our actual product. So, the CMS tool, our apps, so on and so forth. So they do things like the email campaigns, right? This is kind of similar to MailChimp in a way, but kind of more stripped down. So it's just a way for you to kind of manage your newsletters and your mailing lists and all that. And they've also worked on our analytics app. This is actually the version 2.0 of the app. And at this point, they introduced a lot more features and a lot of more, it's a much more insightful app. So it's really cool to see, just in 2 years that I've been there, all of our products and kind of tools and offering really evolving in such a short amount of time. All right, so now I want to talk about the Content Studio. This is the third kind of pillar of our creative team. In the Content Studio, it's really important group. We have photographers, photo art directors, motion designers, animators, producers, and they're always there for us to partner with them to really push our ideas and also finding ways of really executing some of those. So all those kind of cool assets and things we've seen, they're mostly produced by our Content Studio. So they've done things. So this is an example of some work they've done. This was for the Q2 campaign. It's basically just showcasing some of the templates we offer. So here, another shot. I love how they included like this kind of GIF-like little effects. It's super simple, but really makes the product kind of shine. And then a project that I actually worked very closely with the content studio, it was the circle redesign. So partnered with the photo art director and the retoucher and the photographer as well to kind of come up with the look and feel and the style we wanted for this project to have. So another shot from the same shoot is, so this one was created for the events section. And I really love how it really represents this idea of hanging out and gathering and drinking and socializing in a kind of more abstract and elegant way. And here's just one shot from our actual content studio, which is actually within our building. So it's really cool to be able to see the project all the way from concept to execution. All right, so we went through all of this work, and hopefully that was a good way of to kind of clarify what the teams are responsible for and kind of how the teams kind of work together as well. Now I want to kind of dive in a little bit more on the creative process for the web design team. So generally speaking, the creative process is very similar to a lot of other places that I've worked in the past, with a few kind of key differences that I'm going to be pointing out along the way. So starting by generating insights, right? The kind of the scope of the work, what we want to tackle. And those insights, they can come from a variety of places, right? More commonly, they will come from the strategy and the marketing team. They can also come from our customer care team. Our customer care team is this team that's really, in contact with our customers and really understanding their pain points and issues and kind of compiling some very thorough reports with some very interesting actionable items for us. So it's a very good source of inspiration and insight. And lastly, some of those insights can also come from the design team as well, which, sometimes that doesn't happen in some other places, but we are constantly doing research, seeing what's out there, and really, kind of gathering all this kind of inspiration, information. And then, so some of those actionable items can be self-generated as well. Once we decide the scope of the project, we then move to the design phase, which again is really similar to a lot of places that I've worked in the past. So we start by doing research. So here's an example of, we always use Dropbox paper to kind of keep track of our process. So here's a bunch of kind of timeline-like experiences that we got inspired by. Once we do this research, we go through the ideation process. So really doing a lot of whiteboard sessions and brainstorm sessions and trying to come up with as many ideas as possible. After that, once we have a few territories that we're gravitating towards, then we start putting together some kind of more fleshed out comps. So this is a comp for the timeline we just saw. And then while we're putting together some of those comps and kind of pushing the design of it, we are constantly prototyping and testing as a way of testing some of those ideas. And the level of fidelity of the prototype can vary. Some of them can be just using principle and just kind of see some of the animations. And some of them can also be kind of more fleshed out, coded prototypes. So an example of a prototype we've put together, it was for the circle site that we've just seen it. And the idea we were trying to push here is this use of a circular UI as a way of going through customers or circle members. So, it's a fairly simple idea, but it was really hard to sell this concept just by showing static comps. So we decided to, fully build that. And it was great because people could actually test it and feel how it would work. And by doing that, it was really helpful to also sell this idea with our leadership. So the last two phases of the creative process is where I see a lot of differences or some positive aspects when you work in-house. So the idea of testing, it's a very important one. So here's an example of an A/B test we ran on our template store. So on the left, you can see the problem we were trying to solve was this idea of the search bar component. A lot of people they just didn't see it, or people were searching for things kind of unrelated to the template store. So our solve was to really kind of blow out and make it more prominent at the top. and using this extra space as a way of kind of guiding the user and showcasing the behavior of that component, so the things you're supposed to be searching with that field. And this new improved template store actually performed better, and that's the version that's currently live. So beyond testing, I think this idea of repetition, iteration, it's something that I feel it's really part of what we do. So here's a couple of examples of our homepage heroes, where we tried like so many ideas and kind of different look and feel, photography, messaging, and functionality. So really iterating and kind of bringing back with you the knowledge you gather in previous rounds and be able to tackle similar problems with all the knowledge that you've been gathering. So another example of a iteration that you can really see how the product's evolving, or our touch points are evolving, is this idea. So the version 1 here, it's the circle, and it's much more static. And then on the right one, you can see how the site really became more immersive, and that the human aspect really came through. All right, but why I'm showing all this work? I'm showing all this work because I think there's something really powerful about having all the creative aspects of a brand being developed under the same roof. You know, when you work in-house, you really live and breathe the product that you work for. You know, and over time, I feel like you develop this deep knowledge of the industry that you're part of. So just a small example. So this is a list that I've been putting together with all the competitors we have, from kind of big direct competitors to like small one-off ones. And we often go through the exercise of really breaking down their, value proposition and their tone of voice and their product offering, really understanding what they are, how they are presenting themselves. All the way to this kind of like super geek, kind of spreadsheets with all the components and modules and kind of cross-referencing all of those. And I think that this type of exercise is really important to make sure that whatever we put out is a little bit more unique and it has something different about it. And beyond the kind of the synergy and this kind of the processes within the web design team or the creative team, another aspect of working in-house that I saw it felt very kind of special and unique to me, it was this idea of really constantly collaborating with some other disciplines. As I mentioned, the strategy team, the marketing team, customer care, and even legal and finance, which are often disciplines as a designer you wouldn't think you would be working with and interacting as much. And then having all those really talented and very different sets of skills and constantly collaborating, sometimes for years, I think there's something very powerful in there as well. So the formula for the success of some of those companies, to me, is this idea of building long-lasting work relationships and really time, iteration, and going back to similar problems, and then you can achieve some really great results. All right, so that was briefly kind of my experiences working at Squarespace so far. Now I want to talk about, quickly, some of the career possibilities in creative today. So part 2, the creative industry landscape. So when I started my career, I only had really 2 options, or only kind of 2 types of places to work at. I could either work at an ad agency or a more traditional graphic design studio, right? 10, 15 years ago, or at least back in Brasilia. But I feel like with the growth of the tech industry for the past 10 or 15 years, it really enabled a variety of careers in tech that just didn't exist before, right? Nowadays, you can work for all company sizes and business and kind of, industries. So here, I just put together kind of, a few examples would be, dating or transportation, finance, and services. And just by looking at their apps, you can tell as a designer the types of problems you're going to have to solve. They really vary, right? So I think it's important to find a place that with a business that you feel more inclined to solve problems for. But does that mean that a career in tech is the only way to go? Of course not. Nowadays there are a few companies with a product-focused mentality that I really admire, a few agencies with a product-focused mentality. So places like Instrument in Portland, or Work & Co. here in New York City. I feel like those places, they're doing such an amazing job of kind of combining some of the benefits or some of the mentality of a product-focused place, but also some of the benefits of working at an agency, and really creating an environment that's kind of bigger than the sum of those parts. All right, so I briefly talked about the career possibilities in creative today, and because I feel like there are so many fields and places we can really work at, I want to share some tips and tricks on how to find the best workplace for you. So part 3, finding the best workplace for you. So number 1, make sure to find a place with the right pace for you. Some places might move too slow for you, some places might move too fast for you. So I think it's important to find a place where it aligns with your energy level and your kind of work style. And make sure you take into considerations your other passions in life, right? If you like painting or pottery or whatever else you like to do as a hobby, it's important to find a place where it allows you to carve out some time for the other things you want to do in life. Number 2, make sure to find a place with the right brand for you. From a design perspective, it's important to find a place that you admire their tone of voice, their look and feel, their brand, really. Because after all, those are the tools you're going to be working with all day, sometimes for years. So you really need to feel stoked about their look and feel and their brand in general. So number 3, make sure to find a place with the right size for you. The size of the company can be a good indicator of how structured the place is. Smaller places, they can be fun, but sometimes they lack resources and structure, and they can be a little frustrating over time. But on the other hand, bigger places, they definitely have the resources, right? But sometimes the roles start becoming very specialized, which can be a little frustrating and kind of less fulfilling on a personal level. And lastly, make sure to find a place with the right industry for you. A place that you really admire their product or idea. To be honest, I spent a lot of time in my career working for clients that I didn't connect with, selling products and ideas that I just didn't care much about. All right, André, what if I'm just starting? What if I don't get to choose the type of clients that I work for? I think either way, you should make the work meaningful, innovative, and exciting, no matter the industry they work for. In the past, I worked for clients in finance, healthcare, and even oil companies, which are often considered kind of less sexy industries. There's nothing wrong about those industries, by the way. They're very common in places like New York City. But I always had this goal of making something special for them, kind of added some flair to the projects. So to conclude this presentation, what have I learned working in-house? Is that it really doesn't matter where you work at. At the end of the day, it's up to you to create the best experiences your users can get. Thanks, everyone.